We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, the podcast where we dive deep into the art of songwriting, chat with some of the most exciting artists in the world and explore the stories behind their songs. I'm your host, Simon Fink, and thank you very much for joining us once again. Our guest this week on the podcast is Bad Dreems. The Adelaide rock staples have become one of the country's most beloved bands over the past 15 years, known for their chugging live shows and sharp, unfiltered take on modern Australia, often described as a punkier Paul Kelly or a garage rock take on Midnight Oil. For many Aussie rock fans, their debut Dogs at Bay still stands tall as one of the most defining records of its era. Today marks a huge, but if not bittersweet, moment for the band as they released their brand new album, Ultra Dundee. It is a record that once again taps into the realities of contemporary Australia, delivered with the grit, humour and honesty that has defined Bad Dreems from day one. Alongside the release, they've announced a national tour and launched their own Gather Sounds Festival, spotlighting South Australian and Australian rock talent. But with the good also comes the difficult news. The band have announced an indefinite hiatus. On today's episode, we are joined by Alex Cameron and Ben Marwe from Bad Dreems to talk all about Ultra Dundee, not just as a body of work, but also as a mindset. We chat about how their songwriting has evolved since the Dogs at Bay days, what this new record represents for them, and the realities behind the decision to step away from the band, at least for now. Now, we want to say a massive thank you to Jerry for her help with today's episode and remind everyone that the Bad Dreems record, Ultra Dundee, is out right now. You'll find the links in today's show notes on where you can purchase the album, catch the band on tour, and grab tickets to their Gather Sounds Festival taking place at Adelaide Uni on April 10th and 11th. While you are in the show notes, please make sure you subscribe to This Song Is Yours and go and follow us on our Instagram and our TikTok channel. We would really love it if you did. It helps us out and it keeps you up to date with all new episodes, guests, and everything else that we've got going on. We've mentioned it before, but we'll mention it once again. We also recently relaunched our playlist feature on our website, so you can now find curated playlists from all your favourite artists and music curators. That's over at thissongisyours.com. We're not going to waste any more of your time though. Let's get into it. Here is our conversation with Alex and Ben from Bad Dreems. Please welcome back to This Song Is Yours, Alex Cameron and Ben Marwe from Bad Dreems. Gentlemen, hello, how's it going? Welcome back to the podcast. It's lovely to be chatting with both of you today. And yeah, very excited to kind of have new baddies to talk about today in the form of Ultra Dundee. Firstly, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Of course. How are we feeling that, look, in all full disclosure to a number of the listeners of this podcast, there's a lot going on in the world of the baddies at the moment. There's this new album out. There is an incredible festival that you're putting on called Gather Sounds, which whether AFL endorsed or not, we'll discuss that later as well. But and then unfortunately, there is some bittersweet news as well this morning that the band is going to go on a bit of a hiatus. So there's a lot to process. We'll talk about that news maybe later on in the chat. But I'm wondering, what's the vibe like in camp, Bad Dreems? How are you guys feeling with all of this going on at the moment? I imagine it's a multitude of feelings.
Exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
A bit frazzled at the moment. We've there's a lot of WhatsApp messages flying around with us trying to organise the release, which we're releasing this album ourselves and sort of manage ourselves. So it's quite chaotic in the best of ways.
Of course, this is coming out on your own imprint. Has there been anything that that has surprised you about the process so far, I guess, in terms of being your own label? What's been the thing that's kind of taken you back the most about it?
Not really, because we've done it like this. Even though we have had labels in the past, we've been heavily involved in micromanaging, you could say. So, yeah, it's not surprising. It's just it's just a process. And we like to try and get the best out of ourselves in the process. So, but there's a lot of work that goes into trying to put music out and get people to hear it, especially in this day and age.
This new album, it is called Ultra Dundee, for those who might have missed us mentioning it at the start. Firstly, incredible title for a record. Love the title of this record. Curious for those people who are listening who might have a few questions. Is it a character? Is it a state of mind? Is it a place that you can go? What can you share, I guess? What are you allowing people to know about Ultra Dundee?
Yeah, it is. It's all of those things for sure. It came up with it probably about a year ago. The jury's out on as to whether I stole it from something or can't recall if like my dyslexia was off that day and I'd placed two words in a sentence together that I was from something I was reading. But initially I sent it to Camo, and I thought it would be. I think I said something like, "This would be a good song title," and he thought, "No, that'd be a good album title." So we had it kind of before we'd fleshed out any of the bulk of the ideas for the songs. And in my mind, at a very early stage, I'd kind of had this dystopian outback theme park in mind, but that was very quickly washed away. And then as the idea developed more and more, it became quite obvious that Ultra Dundee was the man. He was the amalgamation of all of the characters and the themes that we've sung about over the past 15 years. The peak embodiment of that guy, which includes, made up characters, people things drawn from people that we know, and even parts of ourselves. But it's interesting, and Alex can take you on his version of what it means to him. But yeah, it was very interesting. We we're coming from it at two very different angles.
Yeah, for whatever reason, when Ben mentioned that title, I loved it immediately, but had a place in mind, something maybe akin to Ultra Kakadu, like a very vivid, almost psychedelic version of the outback expanses of Australia. And almost in a way, maybe when you mentioned a state of mind as well, the more dark or subterranean parts of Australian culture turned up to the extreme. So I was interested, and for whatever reason, the reference to Mick Dundee sort of escaped me. And then when Ben and I were talking about the themes of the album, and I learned that he'd been thinking about the character, the embodiment of all of these characters put together, and I had this idea of a landscape. They kind of gelled together quite nicely. And I think, if anything, Ultra Dundee is the subterranean layer of our country's maybe consciousness put into both a person and a country and a landscape.
I kind of love the concept of it, though. I kind of do love the fact that it is, as you said, an embodiment of characters, that it is potentially representing a lot more within society. As I mentioned, state of mind, it's a way of being, it's a way of living. It is a fantastic record. We've been very lucky enough to have a listen to a number of key tracks on the record before it has come out today on Friday. Do you guys still feel that sense of excitement in sharing new music when you're putting an album out? I know that, Alex, you mentioned that obviously you've always been heavily involved in that behind-the-scenes aspect, but is there still that kind of kick that you get when fans and family, friends, whoever it may be, are able to hear the fruits of the labour, what you've been working on for however long, and it's out, available to listen?
Yeah, I think so. I guess in terms of time as a band, the time that you release new music for the first time is relatively small. So it is always does have an element of excitement. But it's a little bit hard to get I find a little bit hard to get an impression of how it connects with people, what they think, until you go out and play the songs and really watch people's reaction, and then even talk to people about the songs, because the online world is so, it's such a detached medium that, comments on a page or a number connected to the number of plays or something, even though we place, unfortunately, a great deal of importance gets placed on it in an industry sense, it's kind of meaningless. So I think there is an excitement, but then there's also a bit of a letdown when it's like you're just looking at some numbers or some sentences on a screen that really don't mean that much. Or sometimes you think they mean something and then they end up not meaning anything. I don't know. What about you? I'd be interested to see what Ben says about that. It's not something we've discussed that much.
I don't know. I feel like you're so busy with all the shit that goes into releasing an album. You don't really have time to get excited for people to hear it. And then when it's out, you've heard it so many times that you don't really want to listen to it for a really long time. And I never do. It usually takes me about a year or a year and a half to listen to the album in full again. But yeah, I mean, I love hearing what our friends and family have to say about it. You often receive a bunch of text messages, but they dry up pretty quick and people move on to the next thing in the 24-hour news cycle. So, I mean, yeah, I do still get excited, but it's more at this stage of our careers. It's definitely a lot of exhaustion involved, but I'm super proud of this release. I do think it's our best by a stretch.
I think you should definitely be very proud of this record. It is an incredible record. You've done very well with it. Even sonically, having a listen, there were certain tracks that I myself thought, oh, that's like an interesting kind of sonic choice, or maybe like a evolution or progression of like the Bad Dreams sound. I thought there were definitely moments where I was like pleasantly surprised in kind of where it was going, and I thought that was very, very cool. With the record, you worked with Dan Luscombe for the record. I think that you've maybe worked with him before on previous albums. What was it that made him the right man for the job this time around again? Or was it that obviously there's that established relationship, so almost kind of what you're going to get?
Yeah, well, we did. You're right. We did the previous album, Hoo Ha, with Luscombe, and it was mixed by the same person, Aaron Couples. And, I think Luscombe is a great person for us to work with because he's not very interventionalist as a producer. He sits back, but also when he does put an idea forward, you know that it's going to be something good. And I think we're at the stage of our writing and recording career where we have quite a firm sense of what we're wanting to do. I mean, you'd hope so by album number 5. And in particular, in this album, a fair bit of work had been done in our own little studio with fleshing out the demos and creating a lot of the textures and synthesizer parts, drum machines and whatnot. So it was good that Luscombe had some producers would want to just trash that and put their own stamp on things, but he was very accommodating in letting us bring those parts in, use them as part of the final recordings. And yeah, he's just a very good vibe guy. Like producing is a lot of it's psychology. So making sure that, he knows when to sit back and tell stories, and he knows when to crack on and get stuff done. So he works well with our team.
I absolutely love that. Has there been, I know you mentioned his album number 5, I think, what was it? Dogs That Pay. It was 2015, but obviously I think an EP or two before that. If I'm correct or incorrect, please let me know. With that, do you think that the dynamic of how you write songs has changed? I imagine obviously it has improved, or as Alex, you referred to, maybe even like it's like a working kind of machine that you've got in good shape at this point. But how has that dynamic changed over the years, and have you found that it has, I guess, things that surprise you still with the process of writing together?
I think you trust each other a lot more to just do what they've got to do, and you feel less and less like you have to impart or imprint any more of yourself on the song than it needs, whether that comes in the way of lyrics, chords, progressions, song structure. Like I, for one, don't really have any. I let Alex and Ali go to town on. I wouldn't have any input on guitar tones or sonics, just because it's not my area of expertise, and they're far better, better equipped to deal with those sorts of things. But this album in particular, though, was really pieced together over a longer period of time than we had done in the past. The early days, we would flesh out ideas as a full band playing with amps turned up in a room, which, as I've come to learn, it was great for us at that point in time, and it was great for us to work ourselves out, but it's not a very good way to write music and flesh out proper ideas. So when you've got the time to sit with demos and they can bubble away over an extended period of time, I've found that's been a much more enjoyable way to write and record music, and something I'm going to continue to do in the future with whatever projects I find myself doing, whether they see the light of day or not. But Alex?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I like about both writing and recording is there seems to be an infinitesimal number of ways in which you can do either, and there's no real, and in any one of those ways can produce both good and bad results. And I guess it's just a matter of, one thing that I've probably gone almost in full circle with is when you first start writing music, you kind of understand that you're drawing on something from your subconscious. And I remember starting off and feeling like that was the only way to write music, that it had to be coming completely from this deeper level. And then you sort of learn some craft, and then you then you realize that you can be quite cerebral about it and come up with processes and techniques and ways of doing things. And then then you realize that can sometimes be constraining you. And so I guess probably coming full circle now, I'm more trusting of the subconscious and things happening that have a reason and that have inherent value, which you may not necessarily be able to put words to. And so letting those things sit as they are. And that's what recording and songwriting is, a constant waltz or constant balance between those two parts of the brain. I think you can't just immediately do something very spontaneous and get it out for people to hear. It has to go through some sort of process, but you don't want that process to take the life away from the original idea. And that's so many ways in which you can do that. And all of them are right and none of them are right. So I just love the different ways you can do it. And as Ben said, in this case, we had the advantage of having time and space to have a studio and a setup where we could come back and forth and work on things. And that kind of actually allows you more freedom of letting that process work correctly. Like if you're just having to go into a room in 3 days and like demo something, you're kind of a bit constrained. Whereas if you can just pop into a studio and spend half an hour doing something, or you can decide to go in there and spend, a whole day like working on a particular part, it allows flexibility in letting that process flow.
100%. We've spoken to a number of songwriters over the years where, as mentioned, lots of different methods work for lots of different people, but there is something very nice about the ability to take your time with something and still be spontaneous, but also see where the spontaneity kind of lands once it does settle, and whether it still has that magic, whether it's not exactly what you thought or kind of what was made from it. I am curious and want to touch on a little bit, as mentioned at the top and in news that has come out today. Bad Dreams has made the decision to go on a bit of a hiatus. I'm curious as to whether that was a decision made pre-making of the album or post, and whether that is why it maybe took a bit of a longer time to make it, or whether it influenced any of the either lyrical choices, sonic choices. Maybe it was if this is going to be the last, let's put this instrument, or let's do something wild on it. I'm wondering whether that played into the making of the album, or whether it was just something completely separate.
we do like to plan ahead. We're not that organised. But this was actually something that came about. It's a feeling just on a personal level that has been within me for the past sort of year during this process, that it kind of felt like it was coming. But it culminated in Alex and I going to watch Nick Cave recently, actually, at here in Adelaide. And we got there at a reasonable time, like a bit early, seeing the crowd flood in. Got there to watch Aldous Harding play prior. And we were kind of just like talking about all of the work that we had to do or had been doing, in terms of booking in all of the stuff for tours and what the next 18 months would look like. And we kind of just got to a point where, like, this is kind of what we want to be doing in music going forward, like going to gigs together. It doesn't necessarily have to be us holed up in some dingy studio or stuck in vans together or, spending tens of thousands of dollars on flights around the country. And it just kind of felt like the right time to just put it away for a bit and spend some time on ourselves and our families and our friendships and just, develop the next part of our lives as we get a little bit older.
That's exactly right. I mean, I think that the last time Ben and I had done something like that was, I can't even remember when, because, whereas when the band or the project first started, even before it was a band, I still remember fondly, like, Ben and I went on this trip to Newcastle and to watch a festival in those days called Winter Chills. I was like, we were just doing, it was like music and we were sort of starting to make songs and record them, but it was just music for music's sake. And going and watching this festival that was really cool in Newcastle. And so, it's exactly like Ben said. We're like sitting there and it's like, I don't think we're really getting a lot out of sitting in meetings every week to plan like a social media campaign and, how we're going to sell tickets to a tour sort of thing. Like, we'd much rather actually be spending time doing what we're meant to be doing, which is just enjoying music and, and getting that balance back, and staying true to what we started this for, which was actually just music and creation and being part of a music community. And by no means are we, do we want to come across as like ungrateful or that we've had all these opportunities, and we'd probably do the same thing again. But having seen and done a lot of the things we do, we don't really have a lot of motivation to keep doing them, because having done all those things like tours, playing in festivals, getting on the radio, all of that, a lot of that stuff, once you've done that, it's like you just realise actually the thing that's actually most important that you still value and enjoy is the music, the writing songs and the friendships. And you don't need all that other stuff. Kind of feels like nowadays it gets in the way a bit of all that.
I think as well, and please, I don't want to, I guess, put my own opinion on this, but also, as you kind of alluded to with the, sitting in a meeting, looking at a social media campaign, in 2026, the music industry is a much different beast than what I think it was even 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And it's, in terms of getting people to listen to music and to get them interested in music, it seems like there is a lot more focus on actual content than the music itself, which I imagine, from an outsider's perspective, is something that Bad Dreams really isn't interested in. I don't see you guys as big TikTok dancers, if I'm being honest.
Nah, and I mean, I often do reflect on that, because I do remember when the band started, I did have a lot more enthusiasm for some of the processes that you have to go through to put music out. And what we're doing now, I've always been a massive fan of music journalism. And so when you mentioned putting music out, one thing I used to really like was reading. I loved reading good writing in street press. I loved listening to good journalism on a local level. And that just seems to have sort of atrophied so much now. And whereas stuff like, trying to come up with a way to do a social media post is, I I know this probably sounds pretty boomer, but it's just I don't find it that relatable, and it's very far from what the music is. Whereas for me, like at least street press, radio stuff, journalism, that was always hand in hand with music for me, because that's how I got into music, by reading that stuff. And so yeah, I think it's hard to remember what it was like, but I certainly I think we'd all agree that a lot of that, the stuff now that you have to do to promote music, streaming, the lack of kind of festivals on our level that exist, like it does feel like a different world.
100%. We're a fellow Adelaide-based media, was what we'll say, and definitely remember those days. That Rip It Up, the DB magazines, the street press that you'd find, some great writers and some great stuff that came out of those, and it is a very different landscape now.
I'd almost love to be slammed by the street press again, where like we were by the Melbourne street press when we first started. I mean, I didn't like it at the time, but now I'm like, I kind of miss those days.
What did they say back in the day?
Oh, they said that we were barely, I don't know, something. It's an apocryphal story that we've told lots of times. But they called us pub rock in a disdainful manner, which then we basically adopted as our own brand.
I kind of like that though. You kind of like owned it, showed them. I do want to mention. I know that we said obviously Adelaide-based podcast. You're throwing an incredible Adelaide-based music festival around the Gather Round football tournament. Obviously not a big footy person by calling it a tournament, but Gather Sounds is coming to Adelaide, and you've got an incredible local lineup there. You've got Dr. Piffle, you've got Wes Theby. I know Phil Jamison's not, they're not South Australian, but there's quite an incredible lineup of bands that you've got on that. I'm curious as to where the idea came from to throw, a 2-night bender at Adelaide Uni featuring some of the best SA bands.
Got to give this one to the great man, Brian Taranto, head of Love Police, our merch company. He's always coming up with and cooking up great ideas. And it was the first gather round. He said to us, you should be playing at the Adelaide Uni every night of gather round. And we just got to the idea too late, and we weren't able to do it in time. And then by the time the second time gather around came to Adelaide, we weren't really active, I don't think, or we were probably in the middle of something else. It wasn't a really good time to do it. And then this one kind of just fell in our lap timing wise, and it was within the same period that we wanted to be touring the album anyway. And we were kind of just like, shit, this is the Gather Sounds idea. Let's do it.
Yeah. Absolutely love that though. It's obviously
so we stole it. We stole the idea.
Look, borrowed idea, it still works. It's still very exciting. We're going to make sure that there are links in today's podcast show notes for people to purchase the tickets and the record as well. Curious, is there a band off the Gather Sounds lineup? I know that Bad Dreems is playing both nights. Is there a band off the lineup that you want to give a little bit of a shout out to, or that you're excited to see play on the night?
Mine would be Dr. Piffle and the Burlap Band. They're kind of like a local legend. And I hadn't actually I'd heard about them. I'd heard about the legends, and I hadn't actually watched them until they played at the nice day to go to the club festival. And yeah, just amazing. It's sort of not, I don't even know. It's kind of like some sort of like wild pirate, vagabond punk, with just like about 15 people on stage playing all manner of things like stomping on bloody boxes and rattling chains but yeah, so good. I really can't wait. Washboard, yeah.
Absolutely love that. They're an eclectic band.
Yeah, all the bands are good. I really like them. It's really great to see such a healthy local scene, to be honest. Like, there's a lot of good bands around Adelaide, like Empty Threats, Placeman, are all playing, but then all these other bands that I hear about, like War Room, Swap Meet, Ben knows more of them from his work at the Scenic, but there seems to be like heaps of Ricky Albeck, so many good bands.
Cold Waves.
Yeah, so many good, Cold Wave, Ella Ion, so many bands that are like doing stuff interstate and overseas, which is great to see because like that wasn't really like that when we first started. So, and once that starts happening, then it kind of usually is a bit of a self-perpetuating cycle because those bands can kind of network and learn off each other and keep things going. So it's healthy.
Agreed. It's a very, very healthy scene at the moment. Ben, for yourself, anyone off the lineup that you're wanting to give a shout out to or looking forward to seeing?
I'm getting to see our old friends West Ebb play again. I remember, we started a bit before then, but we played a lot of shows early days together. And I'm just getting to see them play. It's been a really long time. And they're friends of mine, and it'd be good to hear Moving Out live again.
Mm-hmm.
I need it.
I want to hear Glenn McGrath. Does that still get a showing in their set?
I'm not sure. I hope so.
Surely, as the organisers, the overseers of Gather Sounds, you can maybe put in one or two requests. Maybe we'll slip them this podcast episode ahead of the gig and maybe see if we can influence the set list in any capacity.
Right. Yeah. Right into the contract.
There will be a tour as well in support of Ultra Dundee, as well as the Festival of Gather Sounds. That we're going to make sure that there is, that there are links in today's show notes for people to purchase the tickets. Is there anything, as mentioned, who knows what is going to be brought with the hiatus and in touring in general in terms of the record? Is there anything that you're hoping to achieve when taking this record out this time round, or just to have fun, to be able to get these songs out to people?
Yeah. Pretty much. To be honest, I haven't thought too much about the tour. We've got a lot of rehearsal to go down before we start thinking about that. But it's like, you can see I'm hesitant to say the end because I hope that it's not the end. But we've got to treat them like they are our last shows, which you don't usually tend to do. Because you always, there's there's going to be another one on the horizon. There's always like something sitting in the inbox with a show offer. But it's going to be interesting. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to feel. I've been pretty emotional regardless in my life. So I think that I'm interested to see how I react once we play the last note in Brisbane on Saturday, 2nd of May. But I think it will be all of the things. It'll be happiness, elation, sadness, nostalgia, but I'm keen to get my weekends back.
Very fair. Alex, what about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a bit. I also don't know how I'll feel. Like I think it's always feels like such a race where you're just having to move from one thing to the next in music just to stay afloat, which I think is part of the thing we've got sick of. So it'll be nice to perhaps savor the experience a bit more, knowing that it's, it'll be a long time before we do it again.
Look, I think that's very fair. I think that this is an incredible album to be kind of doing that next stage with, I guess. And hopefully, as you said, it is not the last time. It might just be the last time for a little while. But until that stage, we've still got plenty of time to enjoy Ultra Dundee. It is out today when people are listening to this chat. Ben and Alex from Bad Dreams, thank you very much for coming back to the podcast and having a chat with us. Excited to see you at Gather Sounds. Excited for people to hear this record. But thank you again for the chat. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
So much so.